my presentation, which is a briefing on 8th meeting of the POPs Review Committee to be held from 15 to 19 October 2012 in Geneva. The venue will be in CCV, the Conference Center Barende. The chemicals under review, there are 5 chemicals under review. The first one is the draft risk profile of polychlorinated naphthalenes. This chemical was discussed last POPRC as a proposal submitted by the EU, and the committee decided to proceed the proposal to prepare a draft risk profile. The committee will consider the draft risk profile and decide whether the chemical is a POP or not. This is the first one. Well, a little bit more information on polychlorinated naphthalene. This chemical is made up of 75 chlorinated naphthalene congeners plus byproducts that are often described by the total fraction of chlorine. The committee decided that it is all the polychlorinated naphthalenes, excluding monochlorinated naphthalene, should be considered in the risk profile. This is effective insulating coatings for electrical wires, and it also has been used as wood preservatives or as rubber and plastic additives or for capacitor dielectrics and in lubricants. The second chemical is hexachlorobutadiene. This chemical was also proposed by EU at the last meeting, and the proposal had passed the screening criteria listed in Annex D that the committee decided to prepare a draft risk profile. Hexachlorobutadiene is most commonly used as a solvent for other chlorine-containing compounds. This occurs as a byproduct during the chlorolysis of butane derivatives in the production of both carbon tetrachloride and tetrachloroethane. So the committee will revise the risk profile and will take decision whether the proposal should proceed to the next stage. The third chemical in question is short-chain chlorinated paraffins. This chemical has been under consideration by the POPs Review Committee for many years. The committee will look at the revised draft risk profile once again to make decision on whether this chemical should proceed or should be set aside. A revised draft risk profile will be presented and also be considered just like the other 2 chemicals. The fourth chemical under review is proposal on pentachlorophenol and its salts and esters. This chemical was proposed by the EU and the proposal was presented at the last meeting. But the committee deferred its decision on pentachlorophenol and its salts and esters due to lack of information on whether the pentachloroanisole will be transformed to pentachlorophenol as a major source. So the transformation between pentachloroanisole and pentachlorophenol was the main focus of the information that was collected during the intersessional period between POPRC7 and POPRC8. The committee will look at the proposal once again with the additional information provided by parties and observers during the intersessional period to make decision on pentachlorophenol. Pentachlorophenol is itself, or as the sodium salt of pentachlorophenol, dissolves easily in water and can be found in these 2 forms. This pentachlorophenol has been used as herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, algicide, disinfectant, and as an ingredient in anti-fouling paint. The other chemical, pentachloroanisole, which is a degradation product of pentachlorophenol, has at the moment no commercial interest itself. The last chemical under review is hexabromocyclododecan. The committee took its decision at the 7th meeting to recommend to the Conference of the Parties listing of hexabromocyclododecan in Annex A, B, or C to the Convention. However, the committee did not specify in which annex that the chemical should be listed or whether it should also accommodate specific exemptions. During the intersessional period, the committee gathered information on alternatives to hexabromоcyclododecan and also the current use of hexabromоcyclododecan to consider whether it is necessary to have certain specific exemptions or whether they can specify under which annex that the committee will recommend listing of this chemical. So those are the 5 chemicals under review by the committee at its 8th meeting. In addition, the Conference of the Parties mandated the POPs Review Committee to undertake assessment of alternatives to POPs. One of them is assessment of alternatives to endosulfan. The committee has developed an assessment report on chemical alternatives to endosulfan, as well as chemical alternatives to DDT. Based on the report, the committee has made the short version of the report, which is contained in the meeting document on endosulfan. The committee will consider the decision on endosulfan, which will include the report to be passed on to the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties for its consideration. The committee also developed a report on non-chemical alternatives to endosulfan, which will also be part of the report to be submitted to the Conference of the Parties. During the intersessional period, the same intersessional working group also worked on the assessment of alternatives to DDT. There are 12 chemicals that were recommended by the WHO as chemicals for vector control, which one of them is DDT. So the intersessional working group looked at the other 11 alternatives to DDT, which could be used for the control of vector management, and they conducted the assessment of these chemicals based on the guidance on alternatives to POPs that was adopted by the POPs Review Committee. So the committee will look at the decision as well as the summary of the report on the assessment of alternatives to DDT, which will be submitted to the Conference of the Parties for its consideration. The report will also be submitted to the expert group of DDT, which will take place shortly after the POPs Review Committee. The DDT expert group has been established to develop recommendations for the Conference of the Parties on the continued need for the use of DDT as an acceptable purpose for vector control. The third assessment undertaken was on alternatives to PFOS in open applications. The Secretariat was requested to commission a technical paper on PFOS in open applications, and the committee was requested to develop recommendations on PFOS in open applications. The technical paper is contained in information document of the POPs Review Committee meeting, and the recommendations developed based on the technical document are contained in the core meeting document. Those were the assessment of alternatives to listed POPs undertaken by intersessional working groups. In addition, the Secretariat was requested to develop process for evaluation of brominated diphenyl ethers pursuant to paragraph 2 of parts 4 and 5 of Annex A to the Convention, as well as evaluation of PFOS pursuant to paragraphs 5 and 6 of Part 3 of Annex B to the Convention. Those are the processes to evaluate the progress made in elimination of those chemicals, as well as the continued need for continued need for exemptions related to PFOS. The process has been developed conjunction with the work program on brominated diphenyl ethers and PFOS, which requested the Secretariat to collect experience from the parties in implementing the POPs Review Committee's recommendation on BDE and PFOS, which was developed at the 6th meeting of the POPs Review Committee, contained in POP Decision POPRC8/2. The collected information will be presented as part of the information document, and the draft processes for evaluation of BD and PFOS are contained in the core meeting documents. In addition, the Conference of the Parties at its 5th meeting requested the Secretariat to revise the format for national reporting in relation to newly listed chemicals, including brominated diphenyl ethers and PFOS. So, since the proposed draft processes for evaluation of BDE and PFOS involves the national reporting process, the Secretariat will also present the format for national reporting revised for inclusion of BDE and PFOS. This will allow synchronized and harmonized way of reporting the information to the Secretariat for all the chemicals, including BDE and PFOS. The committee will provide comments on those processes and formats developed by the Secretariat. Other work that will be discussed at POPRC8 are on toxic interactions. Toxic interactions will be discussed in conjunction with the consideration on short-chain chlorinated paraffins risk profile. Another one is on climate change and POPs. The intersessional working group has developed a guidance on how to interpret climate change and POPs in its work. The committee will look at the draft guidance document. The committee might revise it during the meeting. This document is in English only. Another item to consider is work in collaboration and coordination with the Basel Convention's Open-Ended Working Group and the Rotterdam Convention's Chemical Review Committee. The documents concerning these items will be available as an INF document. With regard to the work in collaboration and coordination with the Rotterdam Convention's CRC, the information related to possible organization of 9th meeting of the POPs Review Committee and the 9th meeting of Chemical Review Committee in back-to-back in the Food and Agriculture Organization headquarters in Rome in 2013 October will be explained. This was part of the proposal submitted by the chairs of the POPs Review Committee and Chemical Review Committee as part of the synergy activities with the two subsidiary bodies. The Secretariat has looked at the feasibility of organizing the two meetings back-to-back and the period identified as possible holding of these meetings back-to-back in Rome was identified. So this will be explained in one of the information documents and will be presented in front of the POPs Review Committee meeting. Last but not least, one was the agenda item on effective participation of parties in the committee's work. The Secretariat has been undertaking technical assistance activities to support parties' effective participation in the work of the committee. Main activities undertaken were webinars and more online meetings related to the committees. These activities will continue and the Secretariat will invite committee members and participants on more ideas that could help participation of parties in the committee's work. Another organizational matters that the committee will need to look at is the rotation of the membership. Starting from May 2012, there are 14 members commenced their terms of office. Those are listed in the very right column of the table in front of you. Another thing that the committee needs to take note of is the chair of the committee, Mr. Rainer Arndt from Germany. His terms of office will end in 2014, which is right after the 9th meeting of the committee, and which means that at the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, which will take place in May 2013, the Conference of the Parties needs to elect the next chair. Also, the Conference of the Parties will need to identify 17 parties that will terminate their terms of office in 2012. The last slide summarizes the logistic information of the committee meeting. The dates are 15 to 19 October 2012, and the venue is Conference Center Varembe. There will be a Sunday pre-meeting organized in order to identify any specific issues to be raised during the meeting and to review the intersessional work. The tentative schedule of the Sunday meeting is available on the website also, but just briefly, from 10 to 12 in the morning will be members-only meeting, and then after the lunch break at 1:30 up until 4:30, there will be meetings for intersessional working groups. Those meetings are open to observers. There will be 4 groups discussing the intersessional work, one on chlorinated naphthalene and hexachlorobutadiene, the second one on hexabromocyclododecan and short-chain chlorinated paraffins, the third one is on endosulfan and DDT alternatives, the fourth one is on alternatives to PFOS in open applications. In addition, work related to climate change and POPs will also be discussed. However, the participants should take note that those are pre-meetings and no substantive discussions should take place on Sunday. It is just to identify any specific issues that the participants may want to raise during the meeting. The meeting documents will be available on the Stockholm Convention's website, and any information that you need related to POPs Review Committee's 8th meeting, please do not hesitate to contact me by email or by telephone anytime. Thank you very much.